Welcome to the Tuesday Weekend, your podcast about the restaurant and bar industry and some of the joys and successes. We'll keep it to that end of things, right? Yeah,
Correct.
We're not going to get petty about anything at all. With me today is the bartender that I go to when I have bar questions, Nick Parkin. Cowboy, how you doing today?
Doing good. Beautiful day in San Diego. I'm on my 3-day weekend, which I now have scheduled all the time. I'm totally happy about that. Looking forward to get going and having some nice relaxing days where I can be on the other side of the bar.
There was a party I did Saturday night that I came very close to sitting at the bar for a while afterwards, but I didn't get out of the party until about 1:15 and kind of wanted to just get home at that point.
I had 10 Indiana Joneses come up to my bar for Comic-Con, so that was fun.
Oh, cool.
All at the same, I'm just like, all right, and you closed? I'm like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, not for you guys, no.
Not for you. No, you have whips.
Yeah, right. So last week, Trey and I talked about training, and it was a really interesting discussion, I felt, and wanted to get part of your insight too before we get on to today's topic. I guess I'll start with, how do you like to train bartenders? I guess the first question is, would you rather have a complete newbie with very little knowledge but the right personality, or somebody with years of bad habits from other places?
Personally, I'm fine with either one. I've dealt with people like when I've been looking for jobs and stuff, they won't hire me because they're like, oh, you've been doing this forever, I can't train you. And I'm like, that's really not true, because every bar you work at is different. I'm not going to go into an Irish pub and pour drinks like I did in a nightclub, or vice versa. Right. You know, if I'm in the nightclub, I'm not leaning on the bar talking to people while I'm 6 deep about today's baseball game, versus the Irish pub where there's 3 people. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I've been a trainer every place I've worked, honestly, since, except for my very first job where I was trained up. After that, I'd go to a job and then, hey, you're going to be our trainer, with as short a fuse as I am known to have for a lot of things. For some reason, I have just ultimate patience in training. I believe that your bar is only as good as your worst bartender. And the only way you get your worst bartender better is to train them. So it's a lot of practice. It's a lot of repetition. It's a lot of mistakes that are going to happen. When you've got the newbie, you just start ground up. You know, okay, what are you going to do first? You're going to put your glasses out. You're going to ice your glasses. You're going to teach them the proper way to make drinks, measuring either with free pour or with the jigger, depending on what your job wants to do. I will point out that when I was younger, we would make fun of people using jiggers because it was kind of odd to see someone jigger or a Long Island, say. You're just like,
yes,
that's going to be nice. But now that's that's more the norm. I mean, the dive bars I go to, jigger. You know, they're unless they're like a high volume bar that everyone's, and honestly, using a jigger costs you about a quarter of a second. It's really not that big of a deal. But you want to do the drinks in the proper order to make them. You know, you want to do the hard drinks first, the martinis, all the mixed drinks and stuff, and work your way down to like draft beer, glasses of wine, highballs, and then bottles of beer, because that's just the speed way you do it. That's how you get faster, how you get better. But you always want to put your glasses out first to do that. I mean, even if the guys or girls been doing it for years, I'm like, okay, make me this round of drinks, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to just do it wrong.
Sure.
So you just politely, okay, now there's a hierarchy. You go through everything with everyone to make sure you're on the same page for the place you work. The other ideal thing about training is you want consistency. You don't want that bartender throwing in, you know, and this is how all this stuff started, throwing in that, hey, my margarita is better than his, I put some orange juice in mine.
Right.
And that's literally where all these variations started on classic cocktails, to the point where someone comes into my bar, can I get a skinny margarita? And I'm like, I don't even have agave nectar. I just make a regular margarita. You can call it a skinny margarita. And like, here, and they're just like, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah,
there you go.
It's tequila, Cointreau, and lime juice. It's a margarita. It doesn't have to have all these different ingredients. I mean, you never want to curtail someone coming up with something new or any creativity ever. I mean, like same thing in the kitchen, like, so, hey, try this. And you're like, this is great. You know, and that's the same thing. Like a lot of the craft cocktail bars around here, when it comes out that they're doing a new lineup, and I know a lot of the bartenders, I'll be down there talking about it. They'll be talking about the new drinks they're coming out with and tasting them with their bar manager and stuff. They'll like turn around, here, try this. Okay, cool. So I'll try it. And this needs this and this, or this doesn't. But it's training like that, and people showing stuff. And then they also do trainings out here where, like, I did a rum training 2 weeks ago for Mount Gay rum. Mount Gay is the Eclipse is what everybody drinks. I mean, we have it on the boat when I sail and all that. It's great. But I did not know that they had an XO that they actually age in cognac casks.
Oh, cool.
And it is fantastic. They have a black barrel bourbon rum they do. And then there's different ways to do it, how the rum is made. And when learning these things really teaches you more of how to use the spirit properly in a cocktail, or how you can create or improvise with it. Like, this is still, I know, going to taste really good because I know how this is made and how it tastes. So, I mean, stuff like that's important. You have to go in training. You have to keep going to things like that. Even at my ripe old age, I still go to trainings, and it's not to do shots and get drunk. It's to learn specifically about the spirit that they're selling and how they make their individual label. It's just stuff you have to learn. I'm very, very, very positive about training. I'm a big proponent of it. I don't see how you can't even have enough. You should have wine tastings. You have food tastings in your place.
Right.
You let the whole staff know what's going on. It's like, here's our new drink list. We're going to have the whole staff come down and make them together instead of having to do the training 5-6 times. So no, my ideas of training are, it has to be done. You want to do it right. And without it, your place just, it's going to be a shit show.
Whenever I was in the R&D for putting, like, I'm thinking about putting this on the menu, I would get at least my core kind of most competent servers and say, try this, because I know what I like. I generally, as a chef, had a feel for what my audience would like, but every once in a while, Josh would want to do his, higher level artistic thing. And it's like, this is a bar. It's a bar with a really good pizza oven in it and a really nice grill, but do not forget that this is a bar. And again, to your point of, we should never stop training. That's true for managers. That's true for bartenders.
Well, I want to bring up the manager thing too, because I've worked at a lot of places. And I mean, it's been over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And one place I worked was actually in Utah, the Oyster Bar. Gastronomy back in the day was kind of the pinnacle of restaurants in Salt Lake City back in, say, the late 90s into 2000s. There's like one or two other places, but their places were the best around. And a friend of mine was a server, and then I went off, working in Charleston, South Carolina for a summer, and came back, and he decided to become a manager. Well, as a manager, he had to train every single spot. He had to train behind the line, and not for like a day, but he had to train behind the line for a week. And he had to train breakfast service and dinner service both. He had to train as a busser. He had to train as a barback. He had to train as a host. He had to train as a dishwasher. He had to do every single job in the restaurant to become a manager. Now, just recently, one of the big places down here, Consortium Holdings is a really big restaurant group out here. They unfortunately burn through managers, but their training for across the board is great. I was at Ironside, which is kind of the reason I moved out to San Diego, is that bar and restaurant. Their hostess was behind the bar learning about the cocktails with the bartender. And he was explaining what they were and how long they took to make, and et cetera, et cetera. And then she had to train with the server. She had to train with the busser so that she had to go and train in the kitchen so she could learn the timing of things to know how to better seat and control the restaurant.
Right.
I haven't seen that in like 10 years, 15 years anywhere. I mean, most places I've worked at, my bar training was bartenders watching me make drinks in pretty much every job I've had, except for my first one out here, where it was a craft cocktail bar.
Sure.
They're just literally like, you know how to make drinks? Yeah. Okay. We'll just make sure you're good. That's it.
Yeah. My training for my current banquet manager position, basically, the F&B director showed me where all the AV stuff was. Mm-hmm. And where we kept the chafing dishes, and I was more or less on my own from that point. Just short. Yeah.
In my last job for banquets, and this was over a period of years, because my first banquet coordinator there, and I was there for like 5-6 years, she would go do her other job because she didn't make that much as a banquet coordinator, and she was a server at a kind of a nicer restaurant, not nicer, but she made a lot of money. But she was like, "Here's your BEO," and go out and go to it. So for years, I was the only one in the building who knew how to do any of the AV stuff.
Sure.
And then I left, and then I started getting texts. Hey, how does this work? And I'm like, hey, send me $100 and I'll tell you, because I showed you 100 times how this works.
I was actually just about to bring up the need to make sure that more than one person knows how to run the AV, knows how to do, any given job in the department, there should be 3 people who, know how to at least get it through the finish line.
Nothing more frustrating than getting that phone call on vacation in another country. Hey, how does the microphone work? I'm sorry, are you kidding me?
Yep.
I'm like, you're calling me in Mexico. to ask me how to turn the freaking microphone on.
Yeah, no, I got a text while I was in Alaska about something work related. Yeah. And thankfully I was back in a part of the state with cell reception when they needed me, because it was otherwise like, oh, sure, 3 days ago you sent me that email, but yeah, redundancy, it's a good thing. All right, unless you have any other thoughts on training.
My other thought on training is a lot of times it does come down again to management. I mean, I've been told to back off on training, like they don't need that much training, and I'm like, yeah, they do. Because they start coming in saying, well, I'm paying 2 bartenders to do one job. And I'm like, yeah, you're doing it so that one of us can do one job instead of having to have the other bartender there to help the bartender do the job. The training at my current job was, again, absolutely minimal. And they had me come in 5 days. I actually came in to train, left to go sail in a sailboat race for 2 hours, and then came back to train again that night.
Excellent.
And all I did was stand behind the bar and make drinks. That's literally, I mean, that was my training. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make drinks. I'll be back in 2 hours. Came back, made drinks, closed the bar. Okay, we'll do the same thing on Monday. And I'm like, great.
One point that came up between me and Trey was the usefulness of having a formal standard operating procedure for the department, but perhaps even consider one for training, a checklist for a new person that comes. Have they been shown this? Have they been shown, here's where I keep the staplers, or whatever, whatever the thing is, some kind of formalized list or SOP, I think really does help make sure that the training is standardized across and not just, oh, well, you had Josh training you, so you know how to do this. Sorry, you had Betsy training you, and she didn't even bother to show you, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Sorry, Betsy. No offense.
When I was at Oyster Bar, I was the bar trainer. I was also the server trainer. The server trainer, had to get her there 8 in the morning. So me at 8 in the morning after a night shift, and then come in and go over menu items and go through training for 3 hours, and then put them on the floor and have them follow a server, etc. And it was a solid week of training. You had a list of things you had to do. You had tests every morning. Friday, you had your final test. And then Friday, you also had you're running alone. Let's see how you do. And it was sink or swim that day. You either got the job or we would discuss whether we should put you through training or let you go. Right. Every time we did it, 1 server or 3 servers, it didn't matter. I mean, there was an attrition. We would have 2 spots and have 3 servers and put them through. And we always had to let one go or move them to another restaurant, because it was like a restaurant group. It's like, hey, we'll move you to the grill. You'll be fine over there. Maybe you shouldn't be working here, or vice versa. Like they'd send a grill person, say, hey, this person's way ahead of what we need. See what you think. Yeah. But it was all listed. And there was 2 of us. It was never just one person running the show. There's always 2, because you need that yin and yang. You need that different viewpoint. Because I'm going to look at stuff very technically and be like, this. First thing I tell any bartender I've ever trained is like, don't talk like me. Don't act like me. That's me. Just be yourself.
Right.
Have your own game. Do your own thing. Don't think you need to imitate my mannerisms, my speech. Don't ever imitate my speech. I sound so angry to everyone.
Oh, and we will definitely in the future get back to the similarities and differences between a bartender and a line cook, because there's a lot of crossover. If you're good at one, chances are solid you might be good at the other, except maybe the personality sometimes. But
I don't know. I've got a lot of line cooks. They're shy. But when you're talking to them, they're great guys. They're really good. They're funny. They're witty. They just seem a little bit, in my experience, a lot of line cooks are just kind of a little bit introverted.
Sure.
They're great in their own crowd. As soon as they get back in the kitchen, they're hilarious. And as soon as the customer walks up.
In my experience, at least, once they own that space, they become more comfortable in it. Yeah. And just like on the line, the ones that I've worked with, their mise en place is always set. That it's a very formulaic kind of, what I use the most, I set the closest to me, just like in the kitchen. It just makes sense. And hey, good tip for whether you're in a bar or in a kitchen, when you're setting up your bar, put the stuff you use most closest to you. I mean, your well should be consistent all the time, so you don't have to look and you just reach. But
I had that happen this weekend where they've changed my hours a little bit because they want to get cut down on some overtime, and I'm scheduled overtime every day pretty much. So like, hey, Friday, Saturday, come in at 4. And I'm like, hey, no problem. I get, extra 2 hours off. Sweet. And I go in, the first day I go in, my manager is the one, he's like, okay, I set this up, so reset it how you want it, because I know you're going to change it. And his setup was fine, but it was far away from where the ice was and stuff. And I finally found out that he's afraid of breaking glass in the ice. It's legitimate.
Don't scoop with the glass.
No, but if like falling off the well and into the ice, I'm just like, because he's like, well, aren't you afraid of breaking glass in the ice? And I'm like, it happens once every couple of years, but no, I mean, haven't you seen me with glass? I throw glasses around and juggle them. I don't. Yeah. They're a lot harder to break than people think. They're also easy to break. Like the hardest thing in a bartending to learn is like when a glass is falling, don't catch it. Because every time you reach to catch it is right when it breaks, and then you're like, oh, I've got glass in the back of my hand. Stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I feel about the training thing. It needs to be done. It needs to be done properly. And if you do it right, your place is going to run 1,000,000 times better. And that's kind of the goal. You can have the same identical bars, 3 of them sitting next to each other. The one that has the best service is just going to be the one that everyone goes to. If you have the same prices and everything, it's not going to matter. That's just how it is.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, before we go to break, just a reminder to like, subscribe, and then tell everyone at work tomorrow just how wrong we are about everything. Yeah. Get them to comment too. All right, we'll be right back.